Scheherazade told endless stories to keep herself alive. From that ether of unborn souls, I too will strive to tease you into existence and help me to survive. In this post-industrial age, with the decline of the sperm, carcinogens, allergens, my barrenness, a worm, made threadbare all my dreams of you budding one day to term. Your dad and I were packed off home with a temperature chart and told to go on holiday, where I rewrote Descartes. I copulate, therefore I am. Excess drove us apart. Imagine my shock. 2 years on, one motile sperm had fused, its exploits traced by ultrasound. Tears met the doctor's news. All fairly typical so far, just my freedom to lose. Painted your room in spring colours. The wallpaper came from France. No pinks, no blues, no stereotypes to hold back your advance. I drank tons of raspberry tea. It was meant to bring you on. Don't feel that you are unwanted. Tying and untying our bond has been the meter of our lives, the knot of our liaison. And then that fateful Sunday dawned when you put out your call, couldn't still my leaping stomach, cool my burning eyeballs. I tried to keep my nerves on ice, but hope has its own pitfalls. By 5, the midwife called me in, drove past where I was born. Neat circle that broke through my pain, but made your father yawn. She who had given birth to me, she was long dead and gone. By 6, strapped to a monitor that tracked your quiescent heart, a midwife dug her vicious hand deep with my legs apart. My thighs quivered like thin jelly. She smiled. That's just the start. At 7, I talked to a woman from my prenatal class. A tornado convulsed through me, turned my eyes to frosted glass. It's coming! It's coming! Your dad rushed to find the midwife. Cold-eyed she sighed. Many hours yet to the birth of new life. My patience for a bed, I cried. Please, she said, no more strife. She found us a white room and a bed, which felt just like heaven till the tornado hit again. Your dad, at his wit's end, sat down, read the Sunday Times, hoping you'd come by 10. I broke my promise to lie low. My lunch surged up at 8, graced the floor like a late Monet. Your dad found a bowl, too late. He searched the lonely corridors for her whose dawdling sealed my fate. It's too early for gas and air. Do you know the pain I'm in? I know my job, thanks, said the shark. She has blood on her fin. Here, couple of headache pills help you float with a grin. At 9, the shark came in unasked and felt my heaving mound. Heeding my appeals at long last, her tense hands scooted round. Fear pulsed like a live current when she ran. Without a sound, before my lungs let go again, she was back, monitor and medical student in tow. I'll insert a catheter, the fetal heartbeat must be found. You, go get the doctor. The doctor brought the world with her. Felt like King's Cross Station. Talked to the nurse in stage whispers, made a gut decision. Is the heart struggling? Can't risk suffocation. Let's attach electrodes to the scalp. Is the heart machine working? She threw me over on my side, waved tools for lace making, and with hooks that could split a trout, began my bloodletting. Let this contraction pass, I plead. Too late for that, me love. Someone gave me gas and air, dulled my pain, like a hood, blinkers a hungry falcon's eyes, and calms the skies above. Just then a searing pain I felt. Water flowed down my thighs as my membranes were ripped by hooks. Action, the doctor cries. Controlled tension turns to chaos. Get the theatre ready, guys. Oh, my darling, my little love. Tying and untying our bond has been the meter of our lives, from cradle to beyond. People, machines, voices, shadows, blubbering light and dark, shaving hair, shoving paper in my face. Here, sign, make a mark. My bed floats toward hypnotic white angels playing Bach. Dark, eons later, white light mellowed to yellow arc that cannot touch the gloom. Clock's midnight hands salute the night, cradled in the hollow room, desolate, man forsaken, like the wasteland of my womb. At last your father came. He said, "We have a boy." Subdued. And here's a photo, 1 hour old. My blurry eyes refused to refashion the image which my mind's eye had viewed, but then the photo swam into view despite my trembling hand. Your forehead crinkled with a frown, thick hair, so very grand. Eyes washed black stones in a face of bluish black furrowed land. Oh, my darling, my little love. I hadn't planned such a welcome. If only to absolve myself, I'll say this ad infinitum. 2 whole days after you were born, I went to ICU, stumbled eagerly from my chair. My first meeting with you. They pointed vaguely to a cot on stage for your debut. I saw a hairy, brown baby. A glacier melted inside, and water levels rose till the waves swelled into a tide. No, that big one ain't yours. My tears could not be dried. I knew then I could have adopted. Didn't need flesh and blood to bond. I saw you lying in a far-off corner, wanted to wave a wand, take off those tangled tubes, fly you to my love and beyond. Lying in an open incubator, steel roof blasting heat. Your head turbaned in bandages, your body free of sheets. Ventilator tube in your mouth, drip in your swelling feet. Thought seemed to have deserted me. What questions should I ask? I stroked your naked inch of arm as tears rolled down my mask. I gabbled while the nurses went on some life-saving task. Soon my visiting time was up. Wheeled off empty-handed, back to a ward of laughing mothers. Single-handed, I faced a line of bouquet-bearing friends whose words left me stranded. That night, your kidneys failed. With toxic drugs in your system, hope of life would be derailed if you didn't pass water by 8. Your dad marked time and paled. A smart nephrologist stepped in. He said, "Let's do dialysis. It hasn't been tried on a newborn, but this is a crisis." He cut tubes to fit. Hope to God you'd shrink from the abyss. He and your dad kept vigil all night. In time, their chatter ceased. Only bleeps punctured the silence as daylight was released from night's introverted grip and one more day was seized. Early morning. White coats gathered, acting distant and cold. Can't chip them from their block of ice. Cheerless voices which hold doom in their coughs. Then, unscripted, you squirted liquid gold trickling into a plastic sack. The much-awaited pee took you across the danger line. The white coats clapped joyfully when your dad told this tale. I wept. Even now, tears choke me. Oh, my darling, my little love. Cannot hold you, nor let you go. Can't stand and fight, nor abscond. Your resourceful grandmother swore, if her faith had let her, that long-distance prayers to God via trunk calls to her pastor had paid off. She had settled with him. But we paid the bill, as it were. Each day, a new doctor came round. I would ask how and why. Missiles from which they ducked and dived. The fourth day, we saw the chief at last. Couldn't look me in the eye. He talked and talked for an hour, but oddly didn't say a thing. His body language said it all. But it was gratifying to be given so much time by someone so outstanding. Had my placenta been healthy? Did they do a lab test? Was the cord round the baby's neck? Seemed stunned by our inquest. Showed graphs of your fetal heartbeat, said limply, we did our best. Your fucking best ain't good enough! I'd so like to have shouted. But my sensor clicked into place, righteous anger routed in this culture of please, thank you. It was me that I doubted. If only you were a sentence. Could have changed the syntax with a flourish of keys, reclaimed you from the careless hack before the damage was done, before meaning slipped through the crack. At 12 days, they let me hold you. Oh, nerves made my fingers ache. Tight, compact lump when asleep. Trailed limbs, floppy head when awake. Turn my fingers to tentacles to stop your jelly quake. Marveled at your sweet ugliness. Stroked your feet, your toes curled up. Pumped your cheeks, you blinked. What else to do with you so close up? I passed you to your waiting gran and watched the news round up. At last, the day came when they thought you had made progress. Slow but steady, your weight went up. No more signs of distress. We were told to keep an eye out. For what? We said yes, yes. I sat gingerly in the back, your basket on my lap. Your dad drove at 10 miles an hour. The horns disturbed your nap. We should have hired outriders. Babe on board, no mishaps. Oh, my darling, my little love. We were coming home at last. Knot in my guts, lump in my throat. What lay ahead? Who could forecast? Carried you over the threshold, laid you on the carpet. You looked at your new home and grimaced from your straw basket. That moment hangs on our wall, snapped, gilt, framed in a portrait. Your days were bloated with crying when you weren't in my arms. That second night, you bawled and bawled, and bawled and bawled, and bawled and bawled, and bawled and bawled and bawled and bawled and bawled and bawled. That's how kids come to harm. In my mind's eye, I crushed your skull. Relief, No guilt, no qualms. I used my hotline to the nurse early in the morning. Please, take him back. He's yours, she said, hardened to my yawning. Could he be hungry, thirsty, wet? How are you performing? Why blame me? Put his cot somewhere where you cannot hear him. You must try and catch some sleep. But now the silence brimmed with the echo of your cries. The chance of sleep grew dim. At 3 months old, you were recalled, like faulty factory stock. Time to run a few checks and scans and EEGs that shock. Overdosed with Valium you were, when we talked to the doc. He sat us down and told us kindly what the results revealed. He's had an insult to the brain, been through a big ordeal. He may not walk, talk, read, or write. My backbone lost its steel. At least not how we perceive these terms. I mean, he'll stand out in a crowd. Nihal's future so black, I could not take it in. What do you mean, insult? It's quite plain English, dear. I mean what he sustained at birth. I really wasn't clear. Trapped in circularity, a vortex of fear. Why was the consultant coy when we're such forthright parents? We told our family doctor, spit it out. I will be transparent. Infarction of the lentiform nuclei. Gee, thanks for the enlightenment. So there we had it, straight at last, paragliding in an arc from colloquial to technical. White-knuckled, we unstrapped, disembarked, our knees shaking, wobbly now, not flying with the larks. I looked it up in the dictionary. Infarction meant death of cells, cerebral palsy. Dear God, you had cerebral palsy. Permanent difficulty in movement and cognition made worse by epilepsy. Permanent. I went blue, grey, white, and hopeless. Would the acronym make it better? You see, my son has CP. A squint, some tightness, some tongue thrust equals lifelong disability. But you smiled, burped, chuckled, farted like any sweet baby. They ask, have you got over it now? How long does it take for the pain to dissipate? Can salt obliterate red wine stains? At 4 months old, you were taken to your lifelong saviors, a place for physiotherapy. The Bobarts were pioneers. That woman had hands that repaired, gave us cause for real cheer. The Bobarts put you through your paces. That first time you slept an age, a feat I never achieved, hard though I tried. Couldn't tell if you were feigning sleep till I tried to disengage. The treatment changed your temperament, made you less hyper. I could sit down and feed you now, no longer a fighter. You'd wait while I chatted. Now your cries I could decipher. Your dad would whiz you round the room, one hand under your stomach. You flew like Superman, chuckling so sweet. We were starstruck. Movement loosened the tightness, the vice in which you were stuck. But God was not in his heaven when Bobarth let us down. They were brilliant with the body, but the mind a letdown. They just could not see, like I could, the thoughts behind your frown. You were a favourite demo doll for Claire at Bobarth, who taught hordes of lively students safe seating in a bath. She'd shout over your cries. You were always on the warpath. Then you fine-tuned your party trick, how to press your switches, pretend to give you back to me, your smile bewitches. She would take you back, you'd scream. They were all in stitches. We filled the time with games that you could play. At 6 months old, you had learnt all the names for eyes, ears, mouth, throat, nose, of course. To Claire, I made my claims, but she wasn't as excited as I thought she would be. Still, she asked for a little show. I showed you off with glee. She said, clever boy, want my students to see. I found it very nerve-wracking, the silence of a crowd waiting as you lowered your head, touched the parts I called aloud with your fist, like Rodin's Thinker. Brave boy, you done me proud. But then I heard that she had told them by way of an intro, do you see how foolish parents can be? Words which cast a shadow on the evidence of their eyes made my claims so hollow. They ask, have you got over it now? How long does it take to reconcile? How long is a piece of string, I answer, with my robot smile. Went to see Grandad in Delhi. Your dad went back early to London. We stayed a whole extra week, dining with everyone, then heaving in the tuk-tuk home. No dampeners on our fun. When we got back to London, you ignored your dad as if he were a stranger. You'd cry if I left you with him, as though you were in danger. Never seen you manipulate us before. It was a life changer. You thought Dad had deserted you. This was your punishment. You had such a wonderful pout, with mischief in your eye. Your lower lip jutted a mile. You threatened to cry instead of wanting more when I sang, "No woman, no." I felt I must plan the future, give birth to one more child, someone to love you after I was gone. But my plans were reviled for tying up a newborn's fate pre-birth, free will exiled. The day your sister was born, you went on the Nelson Mandela March in a black sack to keep you dry, chanting in Marble Arch. Your sister's birth was easy. I felt limp, a napkin without starch. When Dad's real desertion happened, you were too hurt to play. Your new sister would crawl to him, and your eyes would betray the pain of being superseded, the shock of being passé. I would take your dad to one side and beg him to greet you first. But when he came home, your sister's cooing reversed his best intentions. You soon learnt how love's bubble can burst. In Delhi, a friend had begged us, sue the swines who did this. From mere textbook knowledge, I felt our case had no basis. But unspent anger needs action, my route to catharsis. This advice brewed and bubbled inside. A little research would do no harm, was the thought that jogged me along. Then a lawyer lobbed this firearm. They were negligent. You have a case. Seared my brain with napalm. Your medical notes arrived in a 4-inch file, weighed me down with what ifs, Ors, if onlys, regrets, a loser's crown. But your hands might have worked at least, if you'd been born before meltdown. Something in the staccato notes. Nurses under pressure, hypoxia, APGAR score, tachypnea, requires 70% O2 via headbox minimal handling, no spontaneous respiration. The hard truth was, you were born dead. Bookends with no life between. I hadn't realized how hard the staff had to intervene. Human hands pushed one bookend out. Life filled the gap, limp, but evergreen. Though there were days when you couldn't breathe. Found that you had asthma. What seems to be the problem? Asked the doctor as he smoked a cigar. Failed to notice my open mouth going, Meanwhile, the ed psych got in touch. Time for education. You were only 2.5. What was our aspiration? She talked of learning difficulties. I agreed. Learning is difficult without movement. Didn't twig. This was a new dress for retard, like special needs. Sweet. They hold our kids in high regard. I spoke to the man from the council about my preferred school, mainstream, well regarded. He laughed, a hearty laugh between wonder and ridicule. My words froze. He didn't even know that he was being cruel. He advised an MLD school. I thought, what the hell? Home life is a blood-filled cockpit, don't fight on lots of fronts. So we went to see the school. Moderate learning difficulties was the choker the principal proudly wore. Worked since the 60s, new spina bifida backwards. But cerebral palsy, the nightmare of modern science. Babes live who should have died. The principal found her school sandbanks swept away by the swelling tide of multiple handicap, standing at her gate with pride. Jude Wright's smile gave nothing away, won her the MBE. She showed off all her mod cons, happy family philosophy. To a complete novice like me, it all seemed fine and dandy. She promised to admit you with welfare staff in place, but as the weeks rolled on without news, ducked, dived when I gave chase. Behind the scenes, she sought state funds in exchange for your place. I don't know what deals were struck. A terse note with the date told us you were on bus route 1, be ready by 8. Even though they dragged their heels, it was time to celebrate. There was always something missing when you came home from school. The headrest, the footrest, the pommel, the floater for the pool, unstrapped, half out of your chair, slapdash, heartless, cruel. What about health and safety now? Half-baked, half-trained, clueless staff in a so-called special school. I started up a petition. What a bloody fool. The teachers at this special school set aims which did not match what your body could do. Release a toy on command, catch a slow ball, use one eye to choose with the other in a patch. Our physio, Evie, took one arm, one leg, and hung you in mid-air while I placed pictures on the ground. One here, one here, one here, one there. Gravity would help you move when asked, Nihal, which one's the bear? I showed this to the school therapist. Her response, silence. Then she got her own pictures out to try and trip you up. Perhaps we had a secret code. Perfectly. No cock-ups. You obeyed. She hissed, that's not how dialogue should develop. You gonna hang him upside down every time you want to talk to him? That's not the point of this demo. Want to stress he's not dim. So devise lessons that stretch you both with vigor, with vim. That sentence may have left my brain. It never reached my tongue. I thought she would be excited to teach someone so young. But her expertise, like taut wire, was brittle, highly strung. I know that you hated being tested. Their grilling hollowed out your core. Most of the pros towed the unseen line, too scared to stand up for what they saw. From this school, a teacher sent home a note. Nihal told me which objects roll and which slide. Nihal told me which objects roll, which objects slide. Wow! How? Part of a science project. She'd used turning the cheek method. Yes, no. Your answers were correct. From where this teacher of the faith, I'd given up on them, had enough of parents' evenings where my claims they'd condemn. Then I found out she had a disabled son. Made her one of us, not them. At least your court case was going well. They'd agreed to settle, but wouldn't admit negligence. All a shade too subtle for my unsharpened bent of mind. Still, damages weren't little. They would have been greater still, but I'd been too honest. When asked if you'd live with me for life, no question of it, yes. The fund would have been huge if I'd put you in a home, dearest. Still, it sufficed to meet your needs. Nihal, things haven't been going well between your dad and I. We lived among broken eggshells. His son craved his attention. For me, his attention was hell. When he sacked his staff, he'd say, I'm letting you go. As I'd been sole carer, I felt I could let your dad go. Fact is, I ran with both kids, paintings, books, toys in tow. After a decent period had passed, Miss Wright kicked you out. My school can't meet his needs, she said. Of that there is no doubt. Clever. She blamed her school, not you. Her rejection hit me in the guts. Now it was your sis who made you laugh, a role she took from your dad. I didn't have the lightness of being to dance with you till you'd had enough, to tell you stories and jokes that went from bad to worse. And then your sister's school agreed to take you. That Victorian building with 3 floors didn't faze that head. She believed in including all. Moved your classroom to the ground floor. Good at problem solving. I loved that matronly woman's love of equality. Her teachers were so welcoming, purged the hostility that scarred your soul, nurtured your need for normality. All the kids wanted to be friends. At lunchtime, a long queue. Me, miss. I'll push him along. You loved the hullabaloo. They learnt the cheek style of talking as if it wasn't new. But in all the fuss, I miss the fact this was your sister's space. Her school friend's focus turned to you. She didn't know how to face eating alone in the canteen, how to deal with feeling displaced. A question hung over your sight. I felt sure that you could see. I'd creep up to you in a crowd. You'd catch sight of me and break into your brilliant smile. Experts talk so blindly. In class, you were getting a name for being full of wisdom. When the kids didn't know something, you'd solve the conundrum. The teacher would say, clever boy. The kids would say, awesome. Then the guillotine descended. Schools due for closure. Just our luck. Numbers are falling, but it's a trailblazer. Was there another school prepared to give you a future? No energy left. Can't fight for somewhere new. I know that you hated being tested. Their grilling hollowed out your core. So, I home educated you. I hoped with me you might learn more. I bought a BBC computer. Shapes flashed up on the screen. Would sir care to notice the square? Ni hao, where's the square? Ni hao, the square. Ni hao. Ni hao. Serene, you dreamed. Frustration made me hate you. Dear God, how could I be so mean? So I found someone to stand between us. Dear Anne, brought you FC, facilitated communication, cut straight through your ennui with a QWERTY chart. She would hold your arm, you would point A, B, C. You had words inside you all this time. How did we not see? The secret of Anne's success, her full faith in you. When you giggled at the picture of an old man being mugged, she questioned your views. She tested your moral values, not how little you knew. To an audience, FC looked like Anne was directing your arm. If she knew the answer, was she? Could she be doing you harm? I too wanted proof, my inner skeptic to be disarmed. After all these years of silence, broken only by your use of language frightened me. Did your learning occur by stealth, like the fly on the wall? Yes. You learnt by observing things. Boiled water turns to steam, frozen water turns to ice, but coal turns back to black when burnt. What the hell did you mean? Then I slapped my hand to my forehead. Our gas fire had fake coal. Its red glow didn't fade to ash. We were trapped in a hole of checking and testing you, when your virtues we should extol. We went for a walk in Epping Forest, stopped to gasp at bluebells. That week, you were set some homework on flowers and plant cells. With Anne, you wrote this poem, which won a prize, All Doubt Dispelled. The bluebell sings poetry in the wood while I walk through the trees. Down chasms now, see terrible strangers in the wrong, sat, tired. The bluebell sings poetry. You had a full curriculum, sent you to Mags for science. She'd studied at Cambridge, no less. Heat, light, sound, fluorescence, toy cars rolling down ramps, talking of Newton's provenance. You had your own take on science. When learning of symbiosis, you said, "My sister's a parasite." Were you taking the piss? I think we and I are symbiotic. This was your hypothesis. Jenny came home to teach you maths. She drew a happiness graph. You said you were happiest in maths. You were having a laugh. Your sis asked what you'd like for your birthday. You said you didn't care. But when we pushed you a little further, your answer caught us unprepared. You said a red truck with "fuck off" written on it. Your Tourette's you had bared. Your swearing was quite frequent now, and that was how we knew Anne was not directing your arm when you kept saying "fuck you." Anne was much too pure. It was your mum you wanted to outdo. Meanwhile, the council found us a school 3 mornings a week on a poor housing estate. An able-bodied clique brought low by their race and class welcomed you as their freak. The story was predictable and in some ways much worse. We weren't informed of term times, school trips. Quite the reverse. No invitations to parents' evenings, no channels to converse. On the last day of term at lunch, tears poured from your eyes. Are you hurting? Are you ill? Your sobs were agonized. You would miss your new friend Barry. I finally surmised. Oh, don't be silly. We'll have him over during the long summer break. But when I rang the school to get the boy's number, they said, "Nihal's not coming back." I wrote angrily to the head. I wasn't warned to prepare him to lay the groundwork. That's cruel. That's simply not the way. He never wrote back. I got used to smouldering in the dark. Time to find senior schools ready to admit you. Was so burned by juniors, my heart beat a tattoo, asking mainstream schools for their access statements, rarely asked for hitherto. To my surprise, 2 schools were ahead of their times, not panicked by your lack of speech. They aim to be paradigms of inclusion. Go, make your case to the tribunal. Well, then, the system was quite new. You had no legal right to choose your school. We had to prove you'd not disrupt the classroom, that you'd be good value for money, that the school would be good for you. And on that last point, we made our case, endorsed by the experts. Then the other side wheeled out their big guns with the power to hurt. Miss Wright, MBE, and your dad, side by side in their best silken shirts. Your dad was concerned that his son had been kept out of school. Miss Wright was concerned that we were trying to break their rules, disrupt their clean categories, expose them to ridicule. Well, we too had brought our weaponry. Your statement was our ace. They thought I'd found religion. You should have seen their face. I would like to go to really excellent 1L school where there is normal and disabled children. There can be additional equipment supplied by my mum. Great place to go is not a special school. I think that all schools should have disabled children together with normal children. Asserting readers, we did explain to Nihal that perhaps he needed sensitive or astute, but no, he knew what he wanted. Asserting readers will notice that I do understand. By the time you realize that you are wrong, I will be out of school for a year, and it is not right to do this to an intelligent 1L boy just because he uses facilitated communication. The hearing went on all morning. I shook when I made my stand. When your dad spoke again, they were confused. They asked Miss Wright to expand. Her report was out of date. They dismissed it out of hand. Guess what? It was our school they chose. We won. We won against the odds. A party I proposed. And Jenny, Mags, Vicky, Donna, Michelle, Evie, your sis, all were there. We held you while you danced all night. Our arms took the wear and tear. We were in all the papers. We had travelled beyond despair. Oh, it all went so very well. At first, they made you feel welcome, adapted the curriculum, got the equipment in so you'd work at your optimum. Nothing was a problem. This was the paradox of mainstream. They had no expertise to protect, trade on, shout down from, wanted no guarantees of what you could or couldn't do. They put you at your ease. You loved the hustle and bustle. God, the fight was worth these joys. In time, you grew less distracted by all that teenage noise. You laughed when the teacher shouted at naughty girls and boys. Mind you, you giggled when plastic bags rustled. You laughed when Wright said Fred sang, "I'm too sexy for my shirt." Sound tickled your ears, you said. Like the Princess and the Pea, a faint sound left a heavy tread. In maths, drama, media studies, you did well. Coined the name KIST, K-I-S-T, for a new brand of lipstick. How now, Miss Wright? Shame, shame. He might work in advertising to well-deserved acclaim. Anne was getting married. You were required to write something. It was soppiness manifest. But I read out your poem, Weeping, at the full circle. Anne gave you the words, which I was now reading. Finding you in a street is harder than I thought. There were lots trying to find happiness and love. Tearing streets and streets, were you there? Always searching for you, the streets of happiness and love. Fearing that you were not there gave me a feeling of emptiness. Searching leads me to their streets of happiness and love. There I found you. You were waiting for me to give you the streets of happiness and love. You and I are the streets of happiness and love. This was your golden period. Gloss is conferred by hindsight, but everything Anne touched turned to gold. Only your arms were getting tight. From now on, you'd work at snail's pace, the odd word you could write. Unforeseen, the stiffness from your legs migrated to your arms. The speed with which you FC'd plunged to our fearful alarm. We lost the way to your soul, to your idiosyncratic charm. I know that you hated being tested. My grilling hollowed out your core. But now that you might be losing your skills, I'll never test you again. I swore. You were entering adolescence. Didn't expect you to be a wild teen, but I did expect your bud to bloom, vibrant colours to explode from the green. Only when you turned 16, they found your spine was in a twist, subverting its own function, a fifth columnist. We will do an op, said the doc, ever the optimist. As the waiting list was quite long, a plastic body brace would be moulded to your design to keep your spine in place. It fitted snugly. Found myself hugging a carapace. Now, you went to bed locked in a brace, going from man to robot. The thought, wish it wasn't so, crept into my head unasked. Grief is a betrayal of the cause. Pressure to be cheerful masked all truths. Disability glowed, glorious light in which it basked. All political movements start like that, overstating their case, correcting eons of contempt. But disabled and proud left no room for disabled and pissed off. One day, there will be space. The stillness in which you were trapped made you love fast movement. We went up the Tower of Terror, a 200-foot descent. We plunged in total darkness. Oh, you giggled and shat your pants. Despite everything, it was time for exams. We chose maths, though English was your forte, but numbers were easier to FC. We said you would need all day to finish a 2-hour exam. The board agreed to half a day. Still, school organised some work placements. You chose a city farm. You're pictured beside a bale of hay. A horse nuzzles your arm. The others are working hard. You sit there, dribbling cockeyed charm. Was the advertising job a dream? You'd be the Stephen Hawking of PR. In a meeting, you'd look unprepossessing, but you'd be the trick up the firm's sleeve. Sound bites, you'd be spelling. I worried about all sorts of things. Who'd teach me to shave you? What about sex? A disabled man made his sexual debut in Amsterdam with a prostitute. Shook my feminist view. Botox was becoming popular for kids with CP. I was told it might help loosen you up, maybe. I went along with it, even if it was gimmicky. Some of the injections went so deep into the muscle, they had to be given with sedative so the pain could be muffled. Even though they made you jerk, you remained amazingly stoical. But on one such occasion, I found the limit of my nerve. You reacted to the morphine. Your pulse began to swerve. I locked myself in the bathroom. You're dying. I would not Observe. Before my lungs let go again, I crept back out to the post I had deserted. You had emerged from a blackout, alone. No one to hold your hand. Your mother had dropped out. They sent us a date for the op. The surgeon told us they'd insert steel rods next to your spine, build the perfect shaped truss, go in from the front and the back, lungs collapsed 10 hours plus. After the op, you'd be encased for 6 months, maybe more. Some of your vertebrae would be fused. What was it all for? Whilst your spine still had some suppleness, we went to Northumbria, an adventure holiday for you. They had all the right gear so you could sail, abseil, become a wheelchair mountaineer as you zip-wired across a stream. Woohoo! I hoped you'd store this treat to help you through the months of pain. But the mind deletes what the body no longer feels. The tide takes all in retreat. What I didn't know as I watched, this was your final stab at life, at joy. This was your swan song. There's no way I could grab what I didn't know was falling out of my hands. Come back. What are you staring at? Is my umbilical cord dangling between my legs like a sloppy dresser, raw and torn and bleeding? Look me in the face, you! You cannot touch my pain. Siaka, my firstborn. They say in the Congo, the child who opened his mother. There is a sorting office in Jerusalem where letters addressed to God or Jesus Christ end up. The postman stuffed these letters into the cracks of the Wailing Wall because that is the place on earth that is closest to God. These are often letters written in grief at the passing of a close family member. A letter like that must bundle the grief up and put it in another place. This is my bundle. I am placing it in your hands. You are the cracks in my divine wall so that I can carry on living. 10 years now, and still the tears are just a thought away. Death challenges grammar. Is this the home of Nihal Armstrong? I go to pieces. That is still the correct tense, although he is no longer here. When I was a child, this question vexed me. Does an attribute cease to exist if the subject is no longer there? That moment when I found him is a running loop in my head. Christmas Eve, presents under the tree. The more it surfaces, the clearer the memory will be, but it begins to blur already. Surely it is only photos that fade when exposed to too much light. Memories cannot slide when firmly pinned down by grief. Perhaps I should store them away, bringing them out occasionally, fresh in the rawness of their outings. But memories won't be controlled. They rise and play and blot out the present. That night, when I went down to him for the third time, I sat him up, but I didn't bend him right at the hips, and he slid down the side of the bed. His weight forced me backwards on my bum. I landed with a soft thud, holding him half crouching, half standing above me. Somehow, I struggled to a standing position without letting him go. I said, "Woo, soon we're going to need the hoist at night." His eyes smiled, shy and cheeky at the same time. Was he thirsty? No. Was he hot? Was he cold? No. His breathing was fine. His brow felt cool. I said, wagging a finger, "There's nothing wrong with you. Don't wake me again." And he didn't. Not ever. I can't bear such obedience. That is what I wrote in my final note to you, on a post-it. It was your sister's idea. At the end of the service, she suggested that everyone be invited to write their personal message to you on a post-it note and stick it on your coffin. The congregation surged forward on foot, crutch, wheelchair, like a slow-motion film of an army on the move, wave after wave, colourful bits of paper stuck to your brown wooden coffin, a boy's coffin. The cheerfulness screamed at me as we followed you to your grave. Death certificate said acute asthma. Your post-mortem report gave the weight of each of your internal organs. Brain, 633 grams. Liver, 612 grams. Spleen, 90 grams. Kidneys, 50 grams each. My son! Sometimes I walk into your room and call your name. It is the same space that you inhabited. Can I not reach across to you through time? Only one dimension has been breached. Can it not be healed? There are moments in human encounter when only melodrama will live up to them. Like Meena Kumari in Pakiza, I want to throw my head to the skies so that they echo to my cries. My son is gone, passed away, I have lost him! But instead, it is broad daylight. I am at the post office and conscious of the queue. "Hello," says the man behind the counter. "Where have you been?" I say, "My son has died." The word I do not want to use. I disappear behind my dark glasses. It has taken me 4 months to come here, 4 months to be strong enough to respond to the simple question, "How are you?" And now, I walk home, sobbing through the streets. One day, your sister reads out facts about death. Between 1 and 3 months, the body oozes out liquid. There can be several gallons of water floating in the coffin. Sometimes the body explodes like a pressure cooker from all the gas building up. Bits of flesh floating in the water. Stop! Beneath your sister's bed, I find a box filled with your things. Your favorite t-shirt, your pajamas, the last book she read to you, an unopened Christmas present addressed to you. I shut the lid, push the box back quickly. I must not trespass on her grief. She and I go every week to your grave, and I imagine you lying there, head turned to the left as on the day you left us, looking at the wall then, but at a pine tree now. The first snow has fallen since he went. Another shroud to seal him into the earth, to cut him off from us. Nihal, did you find that the living was hard, but the dying was easy? I wasn't there when you were born, delivered by caesarean section, and I wasn't there when you died. I wasn't there. I don't know when you died. Your soul is the diamond of light trapped on my bedroom floor when the curtain closes imperfectly. For ages afterwards, I would wake up at different times and spot this light and wonder if you were knocking on my consciousness, saying, "This is the time I departed from this earth." It haunted me, the not knowing. And now, now you occupy pride of place in the sculptor's studio, emerging from a block of Portland stone week by week, shedding dust like dead skin, whitening eyelashes, graying hair, embalming the face. Sandpaper sounds from dry fingertips grazing against each other. Powder, powder everywhere. I am on the outside of a glass partition, cupping my eyes to focus where no glass glints, on the surrogate mother, giving birth to my son on my orders. My fingers ache to touch you. I should be grateful at this second chance, learning from past mistakes. No more weak flesh, substandard material, degenerate, cannot stand up to time. Here, at last, eternity granted, in satisfyingly solid stone built to last. This time, you'll live. Oh, my darling, my little love. Tying and untying our bond has been the meter of our lives. From cradle to grave and beyond.